the city of Apache Junction. Today's date is March 14th, 2023, and the time is 7:03. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Rudy.
Chairman Hanchey.
Here.
Vice Chair Gage.
Here.
Commissioner Cantwell.
Here.
Commissioner Shanebeck.
Here.
Commissioner Begeman.
Here.
Commissioner Barker.
Here.
Commissioner Callan.
Here.
All present. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rudy. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented and accept the minutes of the February 14th regular meeting?
Chair, I move that we accept the agenda as presented and the minutes from January 14th meeting,
February 14th?
February 14th.
Do I have a second? Second. Rudy, I have a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call?
Commissioner Callan.
Yes.
Chairman Hanchey.
Yes.
Vice Chair Gage.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantwell.
Yes.
Commissioner Shanebeck.
Yes.
Commissioner Begeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Barker.
Yes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rudy. We have no public hearings at this time tonight. No old business, new business. 23-132, presentation, discussion, and update regarding water resources in Apache Junction.
Good evening, Chairman Henshey and members of the commission. My name is Michael Loggins. I'm the Water District Director here in Apache Junction. We serve about a third of the city, so I'm going to present on our third, kind of give you guys an update of where we're at with kind of development and water. And I'm going to do a quick presentation, take this over for you guys here.
Thank you.
Please stop me if you guys have any questions along the way, and I'll just keep presenting here and kind of tell you where we're at. So our existing system, we roughly have 3 wells in our system. They're about 500 gallons a minute, approximately a piece, as you can see here. One's at 500, 600, and 200 gallons a minute. We also, 7 years ago, we built our first surface water treatment plant that treats Colorado River water from the Central Arizona Project, which is on Ironwood, if you guys have ever seen that plant down there. That services mostly all of our customers. We're 95% surface water today, so it's a renewable resource that we'd like to use. We have also a Mesa interconnect we did back in 2008, where we could send our raw CAP water to Mesa. They'll treat it and then send it through their system and deliver it to Apache Junction here. And that's how we initially got into the Colorado River water, our allocation, so that we could provide it to our customers. We have Water Campus 1, where our warehouse is. We have 2 million gallons of storage with 3 million gallons a day of booster pump capacity at that location. And then booster pump 2, we also have the same amount at that location. So they really back each other up as supplies, just in case one goes down, the other one comes on, but they're constantly rotating during the day. So 12 hours one runs, 12 hours the other one runs, backing each other up if pressure's dropping the system. So currently, we roughly have about 16,000 in population, and we serve about 4,500 service connections. The demands is roughly 1,641 acre feet of water per year that we use. So an acre foot of water is roughly a foot of water over an entire football field, and that service is about 3 homes per year. Kind of gives you an idea there. Here in Apache Junction, or in our service area, typical customer, one person, they drink roughly or use 95 gallons of water per day. So pretty low. Most cities, like City of Phoenix, some other cities that Gilbert, are probably around 120, 130, maybe up to 140 per day. Pretty low here in Apache Junction. Most of it's brown. We don't water our grass and don't use a lot in irrigation out here. So really low. We compare more to Tucson areas that's really conservative on their water. So pretty low out here. Roughly about 1.8 million gallons per day we produce today, and that's mostly from our plant. So in the future here, in the near future, you guys have approved with the city our future development Reverence or Superstition Vistas to the south, the first 4 square miles. The first phase will be roughly an additional 2 MGD to our surface water treatment plant as we move forward through that. They'll be building a new water campus for us at that location. If you drove by in Ironwood, they're in the process of building. They dug a big hole, concrete tank in the ground. It's roughly 3.2 million gallons, and they'll be providing 8 million gallons a day of booster pump capacity to service just that first phase of their development. So when we went through this project, I'm going to kind of go through this quickly here. At build-out, they needed roughly 13 million gallons a day. And again, doubling the capacity at that booster pump station to 6.4 million gallons a day, 16 million gallons a day at booster pump capacity. In the end, the population down there, with 11,000 additional units here in Apache Junction, so homes, that's roughly 30,000 people. We were serving the 16,000 earlier, so my numbers are off here, so sorry about that. But in the end, roughly on planning demands is 6,800 acre feet of water that we're going to be required to have to service that development to the south. These are planning numbers that we plan with, so we do not use the 95 gallons per capita per day. We use 155 to be conservative, to make sure that we're not sure where they're going to end up. Could they be 130? Could they be 120? Where are they coming from? Is it going to be 95? So we're conservative on our planning for water. So that's what we planned on. So roughly about 6 million gallons a day is what's required to service down there. What does that really mean to you guys in the overall schemes of things? So just in our portfolio for the water district, this is a big pie shape. So we go out and secure water supplies. Initially, we do a study that shows how much water is in the ground and how much we can pump out over the next 100 years. So that's roughly this 2,372 acre feet that's available that we can pump out by just pulling down the aquifer a certain amount so that we don't overdraft on it. Our next, so that is this light piece of pie right here. Currently, we are using 0 groundwater in our water system. This next darker blue piece of pie here we have is our CAP allocation, and we have several different allocations. This is for municipal and industrial use only. So back in 1984, they divided it among the cities. We were small at that time, so we just got a small portion of that. So we roughly got 2,919 acre feet. Then over time, we've slowly added to our portfolio. So this 817 acre feet is non-Indian agricultural water. So roughly about 10 years ago, they had this agricultural water that came back to CAP, and they reallocated it out to cities. Everybody had to apply and show a need for it. So we showed a need for additional supplies. We received 817 acre feet of additional supplies. We have 1,000 acre feet here, which is Gila River Indian Community. About 10 years ago, we went out and signed a lease agreement with the Gila River Indian Community to lease for 1,000 acre feet for 100 years. So added to our portfolio, just slowly building it so that we knew we have additional development that we're going to eventually need water supplies for, so kept building those supplies. The board at the time approved all this, so we moved forward with that. The last piece of pie is 285 acre feet of water for 100 years. So we're constantly putting water into the ground. So some of these supplies we may not be using for domestic use, but we're taking them and we'll send them to an underground storage facility. So the sewer district, I heard some of you guys may be on the board at the sewer district. Mm-hmm. They take those effluent or the wastewater that we have, they clean it up to almost potable standards, and they put it back into the ground. So we'll purchase those credits from them, from the water they put into the ground. We have our CAP water that we're not currently using the entire allocation. So we'll take that and we'll send it to a groundwater savings facility. So what does that mean? So groundwater savings facility is an irrigation district that has crops that they're growing. So we'll send that water to them, and instead of them pumping groundwater, they'll use that water, and then we get the credits for them using our water. So we're slowly building up those over time so that we have those and we keep putting water back into the ground. So we're probably one of the only communities currently that are putting more water into the ground than we're actually utilizing, just because our demands right now. Yes, sir.
So where am I? The Gila River Indian water, those are just groundwater credits as well? I mean, that's how you would
No, that's
recover those?
That's physical water.
Okay, where does it come from?
So that's from the Colorado River also.
Okay, so that's out of the Cap Canal then?
Correct.
That's where you
So
recover.
they have a huge allocation, they can't utilize it all, so they lease it out to different cities as part of that. A lot of the Indian communities do that to wait for them to earn revenue.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Is that in danger of being cut off with what's going on with the Colorado River and everything going dry?
So the Indian community, so I guess that I'll get a little bit more into the Colorado River because you guys probably had heard a lot about this on the news. So we're in a tier 2A crisis right now, so a shortage that we would do. So the first tier, we really just start adding water conservation in. This is the first year that we're doing, the biggest thing is the tier 2A cuts back on agricultural uses across the state. It's not cutting back on the municipal M&I that I'm talking about, or municipal and industrial water. So it's not cutting back on any of our water supplies. The Indians are close to the same level of when the cutbacks hit as we are, so none of that water is cut back. The non-Indian agricultural water I talked about a little bit earlier, they did cut it back 25% this year, so we couldn't receive those supplies. So we did have a little reduction in some of our portfolio here, but that's why we diversify and we got different ways we can provide that water. So we really haven't got hit. They're not thinking maybe till 24, 25 before any municipal industrial things happen to us. We're working through different ways through the Department of Water Resources, through Central Arizona Project, and with the 7 other states that make up the basin for the Colorado River, to come up with a way to conserve this water, to keep it behind the dams so that we don't have to get into these cutbacks over time. So we're working through that process with them. So shouldn't have anything here this year, hopefully not next year. We do have some good snowpack up in the Rockies right now, so hopefully that supplies it, but it's not going to fill up our lakes and reservoirs on the Colorado system. You guys are probably well aware the Salt River Project's doing great right now. They're actually releasing water that going over Granite Reef. We are working on a project with them also to move water from the Verde River system and their salt system that come together to build the dam 100 foot higher that provides extra capacity for water supplies. Since we weren't a member land when they built Roosevelt, even though Apache Junction's the closest city to all the lakes out here, we get no water from Salt River Project currently. But this new water is not dedicated to the on-project sites that were there originally when they built the dams. So this supply could actually come to us. So we've been working with them probably for the last 3 years on this additional supplies, going through studies, going through the government, getting loans, and working through this process. So probably hear more about that in the next 3 to 4 years if we can still move forward with that process. They're thinking the dam won't be built till like 2034, somewhere in that area. So still a ways out, but we still need to plan for that. We have a lot of room here in Apache Junction with the Superstition Vistas to the south. This is only the first 4 square miles of 270 square miles, so a lot more growth to happen, and we need to get those water supplies so that they're available, and we can keep up with our existing customers. Yes, sir.
I don't know if this is coming up, but if I take a look at what you're currently using and what we're planning for Superstition Vistas, that kind of takes up your entire allocation, doesn't it?
Yes, sir. So that is why there's only 4 square miles that state land sold, because we worked with them for 3 years before we actually came up with how much land they could actually sell off. It wasn't, they would like the developer wanted to purchase the whole area from the 24 to Baseline, from the Central Arizona Project, the canal, over to Meridian. And in the end, we were like, there's not enough water to supply it in this area. So what is the correct number? So we went through these calculations and said, okay, we can service comfortably 4 square miles. And this is where they came up with this whole idea of this is the only thing we're going to serve currently until we get additional supplies. And like I said, some of those numbers are conservative. So we do have, as part of our agreement, to go back and look at those numbers to say, did this make sense to be conservative, or can we reduce those numbers, and we do have additional supply still today.
Did I hear you right? We do not pump any groundwater right now to supply the city
In our service area.
in the service area?
So Arizona Water Company is a little bit different. They actually do the same thing we do to send to groundwater savings facilities, but they do pump groundwater at the same time. But it's considered surface water because they're replenishing it somewhere else at the same time they're even pumping it. Okay. So they do the same process we do. They do not treat surface water currently like we do as a treatment plant.
Thank you.
So, any other questions?
Any plans to increase the amount you're purchasing from the sewer district?
So as part of this new development, we've worked through a process, and Cindy may have talked about this in the past, is the effluent water currently is just being recharged. As part of this new development, any parcels larger than 2.5 acres for parks will have to be serviced through effluent. So we're taking that effluent and putting it into a tank from the sewer district, and then we're building a tank and booster station to basically build a distribution system. Instead of serving potable water to these grass areas, it's going to be the non-potable effluent so that we can service those areas and not use some of the resources.
Right.
So we'll be working through that. As part of this, the more water we produce, the more water goes to the sewer district. So we'll be doing irrigation with some of it. And eventually, we're going to be looking at direct potable reuse here in Apache Junction because we do have a supply. I know people are uncomfortable with it today, but it's been done all over the Middle East and different parts of the world that you can retreat that water and re-drink it at some point. So we'll be working towards that. We do a little bit of that by putting it in the ground and having Mother Nature take care of it and treat it for us before we suck it back out and then pump it to our customers. But eventually we'll take Mother Nature out of it and using actually engineering solutions to solve some of those issues because we have that water supply.
Okay.
Do we recapture any of the stormwater through the washes?
Currently, we do not. Most of the time in the past, and this is part of the city's evolving, is even part of this development, we've allowed water to flow off our sites, and that's what everybody really wanted to do. And the new development, again, typical standard throughout most cities is 100-year, 2-hour storm event has to be maintained on your property. So we have all these retention basins, we have dry wells that we put water back into the ground, but the Department of Water Resources currently does not allow you to earn credits on that rainwater that goes into the ground.
Okay, because when I look at a map, the area south of Baseline seems to have several different washes come together, and then it looks like it pools just before it would otherwise cross the CAP.
That's correct.
Does that water just evaporate then, or?
Some of it percolates into the ground. That's through the Maricopa County Flood Control District. They do have a channel that bleeds some of that water off that slowly gets out. But I think it was
Maricopa then?
the Flood Control District,
Yeah.
still in Pinal County, but it's the Flood Control District that manages that. About 5 years ago, they approved to put dry wells and work on recharge facilities on their leased land that they have throughout state land and some other dam structures. So we have been working with them in the past to recharge some of that water into the ground so that it doesn't flow off-site. We'd rather keep it here in Apache Junction where we could eventually pump it back out someday.
But then they get the credit for that recharge.
We're gonna have to work through that process. We were gonna be the ones that built the recharge facility to earn those credits, so we never got finished up the agreement that we were working on.
That's fine. I was just curious because I live right next to a wash, and
Sure.
when it's flowing, it's flowing.
Yes. We actually, as you guys may have heard, we were working on one on Weeks Wash. Public Works is working on the one to dam it up before Lost Dutchman. We actually reached out to the Department of Water Resources to see if we could do a recharge facility on that. We're working through that process to see if we can recharge that water and actually earn credits on it. They believe it may be a surface water, so we'd have to put a bunch of paperwork and legal things behind that to make it a surface water, so we're working through that process to see if we can do that also.
Does Robin have any questions?
I'm trying to follow this and watch it. I'm trying to follow this and watch it at the same time. Follow this and watch it at the same time. It's kind of difficult. My main question has to do with the area here in town and the multiple developments that we're approving, especially the lease and for rent developments that don't have to have a guaranteed water supply. Do we have enough of that? I mean, looking at the pie chart, we're about sucked down.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question there, Robin. Can you repeat that?
I can try. I'm mainly concerned with the area in town and multiple family units that we're building. Those that are leased and rented, I understand, don't have to have a guaranteed water supply. So are we okay with continuing to say yes to all these developments?
So I guess, so you're asking the question, and I guess this is a kind of educational area here. So some of these developments that are leases are one parcel and they're staying the same as a master metered community. They do not have to go through the same process as if it was a platted subdivision. So they don't have to prove that there's a 100-year assured water supply for those. Currently, we do have enough water supply to serve multifamily. They use less water than mostly single families because there's less space around to irrigate and different things around their house. But eventually, we'll have to look at that. We're constantly, as a designated provider, looking at those. Ours is based off demands. Arizona Water Company is non-designated. So they have to do their shared water supply, but we recharge, as I was telling you earlier, we recharge some of that water as part of that. They go through a different, called the CAGRA, which is Groundwater Replenishment District. So most subdivisions join that. It's replenished somewhere else. It's not replenished here in Apache Junction. So they get credits for that for their customers. But these multifamily developments that aren't sold off as a platted subdivision don't have to join that and replenish that water. So we do have to be careful on how we manage those with a lot of these new developments coming in. But as a designated provider, we manage that because we have to show use every year. As a non-designated provider, they do not. So.
Okay. And then kind of a follow-up on Robin, I guess. Sort of. And to recap what you're saying, the 4 square miles to the south of us, we have capacity for that, plus our existing community, but not a lot more than that.
Correct.
How do we address then the infill construction that's going on here, which I've been referring to as the north, part of the.
So that's why we saved that 1,000 extra feet, because there's still infill as part of that. So we're constantly working with development services of, okay, how many large parcels do we have? What's the density could be? And saving that water for that infill projects around the city, so that we can't say at some point, no, we don't have any water to service our existing customers or these new infill developments, because we wanted to service these bigger developments. Okay. Also, eventually there may be an Apple that comes in, or a large development, or a data center, or something like that. We have to be careful. They're large users, but don't give the community a huge investment. So we got to be careful in what we do with our water supplies and allocating them out to certain things. So we want to save some of those so that we can get some of these infill projects and fill in the rest of the city, but keep utilizing it correctly.
Okay. So basically we're getting pretty close to the point where we say we have to deny someone a development license.
So again, those were estimated numbers. It's for that first 4 square miles. We're going to reassess in the next 5 years. It's 10 years out, and this is why we're always constantly looking for additional water supplies. Right. The long-term project is one with the Salt River project. We're also, you guys probably heard, WIFA approved some loans for a desalination plant on the Gulf of California, which may build a pipeline up to the Colorado River to pump it back here to Phoenix. We're working through that with them also, so there's always new options. We just got to be on that forefront of, okay, we're not thinking tomorrow of this development, this is 10, 20, 30, 50 years out, that we're always constantly thinking about water supplies to see what we need and where we're going to be at. So okay. The city/water board is the city council/water board is one and the same. So they work with us quite a bit of trying to get out in front of this so that we do have the supplies that you guys can look at these new subdivisions and be comfortable approving them.
Okay, gotcha.
Any other questions? Well, thank you guys for your time tonight.
Thank you. All right, 23-128, presentation discussion, code of conduct conflicts, presented by city attorney. You're also going to do code of conduct, the whole list, correct, Joel?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much, sir.
And board. And thank you very much. Robin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Did you hear Mike? Because if you didn't, he can get up here again and do it all over again.
No, I'll just review it tomorrow.
Okay.
here, Mike, because if you didn't, you can get up here again and do it all over again.
Wow,
She
is that-
didn't mute.
She has the live
That's-
stream on. and
that's my clone, I think.
Yeah.
No, that's just the delay.
It can't be two of you.
That's a scary thought.
To some people, it is. Okay, so this is our annual review of the laws. And which version do you want? Do you want the 45-minute one or the 3-hour one?
Reader's Digest.
Are there,
Plan C?
are there any updates from last year's version?
Those are not in writing yet, but I've created them, but they will be in the next set.
Okay, so
But-
there, but what's in here was the same thing we saw last year?
Pretty much, yeah, there's some minor tweaks, and I'll try to mention some of the new ones. So I'll go through it really quick. Okay, so this is Council Boards and Commissions Code of Conduct, and this document was created by the City Council, and it took about 4, maybe Robin can help me, I think it was 4 or 5 meetings to come up with this document. And so, yes, I wrote it, and it started out at 12 pages. Well, now it's down to 4, basically, and that's what council passed. And there were reasons for everything in this document that the council wanted, and they wanted to apply to themselves and also all boards and commissions. So I'm not going to read them verbatim unless it's really important, but you could read these on your own. You act in the public interest, that's pretty standard, pretty straightforward. Comply with the law, that's standard to most people. Professional conduct, this deals with impartiality and whether, how it appears to the public, and whether, if there's a conflict, what are you supposed to do? Public meetings and due process, this was where the council spent a lot of time, A through E, for different reasons, but pretty common sense stuff. Like if you have a cell phone, for example, turn it off during the meeting. Be prepared, read the documents before you come to the commission, so that you're not guessing what's going on. There used to be called letters to the editor. Well, we don't have the paper anymore, so, but they do have other things that take that place. Sometimes there's like multimedia, Facebook stuff. Show respect for the chair and also staff. And I'll move on. Advocacy. So this one, can you, as a member of this commission, okay, do you still have your First Amendment rights? If you want to talk about other things. The answer is yes, of course you do. There's a new case that's not in here, and I will tell you about that. It's a Long Beach case, and I think it went to the Ninth Circuit, where the city council had, they had a little different setup where they had board and commissions, but each council member could actually appoint who they wanted, and they got to pick themselves, and there was no vote on it. They just got to pick whoever they wanted on this special commission, and I think it involved public events. So one person was working for this council member, basically, in that capacity, and was seen next to basically what they called a terrorist group organizer. So that person was chastised, and basically the community wanted her off the commission. And and she didn't want to get off the commission, so she sued. And basically, what do you think happened? First Amendment rights? Well, she wasn't really on board with what that person was saying at the time, but she was associated with it because she was there at some event. I think it was a Black Lives Matter event. So the council member didn't have those same beliefs. And so there was a lawsuit, and she claimed discrimination. And basically, in that particular case, because council set it up the way they did, that person was acting as the politician's associate. And so they could actually kick someone off. It's a fascinating case. I will definitely put that in the next version. Okay, treatment of staff, that's kind of That one's pretty straightforward. Gifts and favors, $25 is the minimum. So if you have a developer who wants to call you and say, hey, let's go to lunch, let's go to downtown Phoenix, an $800 steak place for dinner. Is that a gift? I'd say that is. It's $25. That's supposed to be the minimum that you can actually accept from somebody. Meeting distractions, that's kind of also pretty common sense. Influencing elections. Well, luckily, there's no election this year. However, when there is,
For inflation?
what's that?
They gonna adjust for inflation?
The legislature has not done that yet. You would think they would.
I think the 25 has been in place for what, 50 years?
It's a long time, yeah. It's a minimal, de minimis amount, and they see it that way, and they don't, any more than that, they see it as, that creates corruption, that creates, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't look good.
I don't think you can go to McDonald's for $25
No.
anymore.
No, or Arby's, forget it.
Yeah.
So influence elections. Can you influence an election? Can you, as a board, as a P and Z member, saying, hey, I want you to vote for this person, and I'm a P and Z member, and I've got other people on the commission that say, yeah, you should vote for this person. Of course, you can't do that. And if you do that, if you start doing that in these sessions, the chair is supposed to gavel you, especially during the election season, say, I'm sorry, you're influencing an election, you will stop. Otherwise, I'm going to gavel you again. And there's other things that can happen after that. Okay, moving on.
So I've asked you about this one many times, and let's see if I get the same answer, I guess. So putting Robin Barker's yard sign in my front yard is not a problem.
Robbins, are you sure?
Well,
Sorry, Robin.
well, this was a couple years ago. But me talking about it right now would be a problem, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Well, there's no election right now, but
Well,
bringing this up as a legal issue, we can talk about it.
Right.
And as you say you want to do it because you want to support someone that you totally trust and who was one of the best council members, I must say, that I ever saw in 25 years. Are you still there, Robin?
Here, here. Yeah.
I'm still here.
Okay, good.
But her hat doesn't fit.
The question is, can you do that? Yes, you can. That's your personal First Amendment right. But you can't say endorsed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. You can't do that.
Right.
One year we did have a commissioner. This is many years ago. And Rudy, you could attest to this. He made up magnets and he put it on the side of his door like a realtor did. Planning and Zoning Commissioner. And he had his name. And he would drive onto the site of the development. And, the workers say, get out, you can't be here. And, he would basically, I have a right to be here, I'm on the commission. And I guess in whatever city he was from, I can't remember, it was the East Coast or Midwest, they allowed that kind of thing. But you can't do anything like that. And that was just way beyond what he should have been doing. Okay, I think legal training you're already doing. Staff recommendations. Everybody who comes before this board as a staff member, they are trained. They know the area of zoning and planning. You may not agree with their final recommendation or even some of their comments. That's fine. You can disagree. Be respectful and just please know that they have been through the training. And so they do know what they're doing when they recommend something. Once again, you can disagree with it. So I'm going to end that unless there's any questions on the yellow sheet. Okay, conflicts of interest. This is orange in hard copy. I don't know on the screen if it is orange. One of these like turned purple or something. It was very strange. So the conflicts, okay, that's like yellow, but it's orange. I'm holding it up. It's orange. The object of the conflict of interest statute is to remove the limit the possibility of personal influence which might bear upon a public official's decision. Purpose is to prevent self-dealing by public officials and public employees. So what does all this mean? It's really simple. If you have a pecuniary or proprietary interest in something that's coming before this commission, you are supposed to conflict off. And it includes your relative. So look at relative definition, which is on page 6 any individual within 2 degrees of kinship, including spouse, child, child's child, parent, grandparent, brother or sister of whole or half blood, and their spouses, and the parent, brother, sister, or child of a spouse. So it's not just you. It's, does any of your relatives have a interest in what's coming before you? And if so, yes, you're supposed to conflict off. And I'm going to get to that. First of all, why should you care? There's a whole bunch of reasons on page 2. There's some criminal violations, there's some civil violations. If you don't care, you go ahead and vote on it, and you had a conflict. And there are some remote interests. So I've been through this before with most of you, not Mr. Cowan, but there was a church many years ago that came to the city. They wanted to add, I forget how many feet to their steeple. It was well above what the code allowed, and so they were coming for essentially I think it was a zoning amendment of some kind. PAD, I can't remember now, but it was a zoning matter. P&Z heard it, and basically that member of, it went to council, and that member of the council was in that church. So he's a member of that exact church, the same stake center. So could that person vote? The answer is yes, because it's a remote interest. It's under J, top of page 4, someone who is in a class of at least 10 or more persons. And that church happened to have 450 people. So that's a remote interest, therefore it's not a conflict. And he could vote, and he did. So what do you do when you have a conflict? Well, first of all, if you think you do, call me. And then I can do an opinion, give me all the facts, and I will tell you whether you have a conflict. If you do have a conflict and you want me to put in writing, or you don't have a conflict and you want me to put in writing, I will. And then that means you could vote on it. And there's no penalty for voting on it from your standpoint. Even if I'm wrong, you could still vote on it. Now, if you have a conflict, you're supposed to advise the chair after the item is read. Mr. Chair, I have a conflict and I'm going to step out. Don't stay in your seat. And there's no law that says you have to leave the room, but I would totally recommend it. And that's because in the past we've had groups of people here and there were facial grimaces. And when that happens, there's communication going on. And you're not supposed to influence, when you have a conflict, anybody, including your fellow board members, even when you're in the midst of the vote. So yeah, you could sit there, but if you don't like what's being heard, some of your body language is going to come off, and I say just get out of the room, go back with Matt, and watch it, and then basically come back in after the item. I think that's it for the conflict of interest law. Any questions? Okay, open meeting law. This is the purple colored paper. I don't know if it shows that way up on the, well, close enough. It is the public policy that meetings of public bodies be conducted openly and thus, and that notices and agendas be provided for such meetings which contain such information as is reasonably necessary to inform the public on basically what's being discussed. So this goes back to the early 60s in Arizona when the statute was created. And basically what it is, you're in a meeting, and what is the public, what's their expectation? How are they going to know what you're talking about? Well, there's supposed to be an agenda, and I'll get into that. But before that, why should you care? There's all sorts of reasons why you have to follow this law. I've listed them on page 1. And some things could happen for fines, civil violations. It applies when there's basically a quorum. So if you're in here, you've got 7 people, that's obviously a quorum. So 4 out of 7 is a quorum. But it doesn't have to be here. It could be an item that you're discussing on Facebook with other members. And if you start doing that, you can create a quorum. And when I first started, I think I tell the story every time. Rudy's getting tired of the story, but it is true. There used to be a second P&Z meeting every time there was a P&Z meeting after the first P&Z meeting. And it would happen at the Village Inn, because I'd go for a late dinner. I think I saw Rudy there once too. And there you see like 4 or 5 P&Z members, and they're talking about the case, or, hey, you know, we continued that. Hey, how are you going to vote on that? It's like, no, you can't do that. So I stopped going to Village Inn after that happened. But that cannot happen. That's a pretty obvious thing. What isn't obvious on the phone, if you're now we can have conference calls on these cell phones. I don't know how to do it. I don't want to know how to do it, but there is a way to do it. You could get 7 people on a conference call. You can't do that, just like Facebook, it's the same thing. So if there's 4 or more of you, can 3 talk? Yes, be careful. If you have 3 of you are doing it, be careful what you say, because if you say, hey, I think all of us are going to vote yes on this when it comes up in 2 weeks, but you know what, I think I can get 2 more votes. And you do that, you're really you're pushing it with the Attorney General's office. Mr. Gage.
Yeah, so if you've got 4 friends on Facebook, and I only have 3, so I don't have to worry about it. But 4 friends who happen to be sitting up here, that's a conflict, huh?
If you're members of this commission, you've been appointed, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And they happen to be your same friends that are on Facebook, that's going to be a problem, yeah.
It's going to be a problem, okay.
But that only applies to discussions relative to what's going on here.
Right, if it's social stuff,
Yeah.
you're all going to someone's wedding, that's different. I mean, do you have to post an agenda when all of you are together, technically? But for a wedding or a social event, no, you don't have to do that. If there's someone from the media at that wedding, though, and they see 4 of you together, they're going to be interested in what you're talking about it. And it's probably not the dress that the bride is wearing. Who knows? Maybe it is. I don't know. But you should be very careful with that.
Yeah, but with 4 friends on Facebook, it's pretty much automatic that you're...
The Attorney General would probably say that's a violation. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, if you're posting on a discussion.
Yeah, but you're opening yourself up for...
Well, if you're just you can be in a group and not posting on anything.
If you're posting, though,
Yeah, then it's
you're engaging in it,
Right,
especially if the item hasn't been voted on yet,
right,
and you're talking about, hey, how do you think about that 10-story building?
right. You can't be posting, but you can be friends on there and not post, and you're perfectly fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm glad I only have 3 friends, I guess.
I've got extras if you want some.
So you are a meeting, or you're a public body, you're a recommendation body for the city council, so you are definitely covered under the definition. We have to give notice of the meeting, which Rudy's people do very effectively, and we also do an agenda. The agenda has to be specific as to what is being discussed. It can't just say it's, I don't know, say it's Keystone Homes. So just say it is, a development by the roundabout. Can't just say Keystone Homes. You have to say, is this a rezoning? What is this? Is it a plat? You have to say more specifically, what about Keystone Homes? Okay, minutes. I'm going to talk about this because this used to come up in this body years ago, and I got chastised for it. Minutes. Do they have to be verbatim? The answer is absolutely not. They do not. And any reading of that statute is totally wrong. And that got proven at the Attorney General's office because I had a complaint made on me about that because I said they did not have to be verbatim. And I was correct. The Attorney General agreed. So that is still the law. And minutes, basically these are telecast out, and that by itself is putting out the minutes. That's another reason, because you're hearing everything. So you don't have to do separate minutes and type them up. You just don't have to do that. Okay, I think that...
So the recording of this meeting could classify as the minutes then?
Technically it can, but we still approve minutes.
We still approve
Yeah.
minutes, which is the summary of what we've done.
Correct, and the summary would be what was done, who voted how, and was there a public, any members of the public speak? What did they basically say, just briefly? But it does not have to be verbatim.
And if you want the details, then you go to the recording.
Go watch the recording, exactly. So that's really what it's all about. I know. I think that is about it for the purple pages, unless you have any questions. All right, we're getting close. Parliamentary procedure. This is the green sheet. And what is that? That's basically how you run your meeting. And it's supposed to be an orderly fashion, and it goes back to the 1800s, where some officer went to a meeting that his captain told him to go to. He didn't do so well, and he said, I'm never going to do one of those meetings again. We're going to have some kind of order with the meeting. And then this individual, Henry Martin Robert, created Robert's Rules of Order. And that's how it started. And I think we're on the 11th or the 12th edition now, dating back to 1876. Now, do those apply to us? Well, our city code says we're supposed to follow Robert's rules as a guide, because they're not exact. They don't fit perfectly in the puzzle of municipal government. They were really meant for fraternal meetings with fraternal organizations, churches, but they are followed by Congress to some degree, even at that level, and by the state legislature a bit. And so who is the parliamentarian under the code? The city attorney is, so I get to be the one who gets chastised if someone disagrees with me on how it's supposed to be interpreted. And that's happened too. But the goals are pretty easy. It's pretty much of a democratic way of doing things. Every side can be heard, but once there's a majority and once there's a vote, move on. Don't dwell on it, even if you disagree. Now, there could be some motions that can reconsider the item. There's a way to do that, but it has to be someone on the winning side that decides, I think I changed my mind. I'll do a motion for reconsideration. And then that goes to a separate meeting, the next meeting. If that happens, only that is the issue on the agenda. Should it be considered, reconsidered? And then you vote on it, yes or no. And then if you vote yes, then the next meeting, or whatever meeting date you pick, would be the substantive discussion of the item. It's basically a redo. That's how that would work. Motions are pretty easy. I move that, and that's how you're supposed to do motions. I put some examples down on page 2. Something you guys mastered was nomination of officers. Congratulations. That was well done. And Rudy did a wonderful cheat sheet. I will say that, because it's great how it's done. And so that goes down back into the history of how nominations are done for officers. Any questions?
Motions. So can one of the commissioners just in the middle of a meeting make a motion about something that's not on the agenda?
No, it has to be on the agenda, but first of all, you got to get the chair to be recognized. So you have to be recognized by the chair to speak. That's what you're supposed to do every single time.
Right.
Now, we're not that strict in this body or in council, but sometimes when you have controversial items, you probably want to get a little strict, especially if it's a really tough issue. Especially if it's going to be, a 5-hour meeting, and there's, 200 people here. It should be fairly strict. Okay. Public records law. This should be blue.
Actually, we can make a motion for like a recess, and that's not necessarily on the agenda, right?
No, a recess is a standard motion that, you need to have a break for 5 minutes or 10.
Right.
Or to go to executive session. That's a motion too, right?
Right, but that's a little different.
Executive
If that,
session would be on the agenda.
I'm sorry?
I say an executive session would be on an agenda item.
It has to be listed that you can go into executive session. If there's no executive session item that is noted on the agenda, you can't just go into executive session. You could have a blanket section that says any item you can go into executive session, but we don't do it that way. We can, but and in P and Z, it's very rare that you would go into executive session.
Right.
Okay, public records. Public records and other matters in the custody of any public officer shall be open to the inspection for any person all times during business hours. The law serves to open government activity to the public scrutiny. So what does all this mean? This means that things are supposed to be out there so that people know what the government is doing. There's some exceptions, of course, but that's generally what the rule is, so that people don't think that things are going on behind closed doors. Now, obviously, executive sessions are behind closed doors, but there's limited exceptions as to why you can go behind closed doors. But generally, when we get to the records issue, for example, if you're taking notes tonight on this brilliant summation, of what's going on, you're supposed to give those notes to Rudy. That's what you're supposed to do, and that becomes a public record that he is supposed to hold for a while. There's a schedule that the state mandates us to hold them for, and then they're supposed to be destroyed. That's how it's supposed to work. Why should you care? Well, I gave you a whole bunch of cases on this as to why you should care. Why should the city care? So if we get a public record request, say somebody wants to see what you're writing down tonight, and they want to see what you wrote down because, you voted no on their project, for example. Well, that is subject to scrutiny. What happens is the request goes to the city clerk. City clerk puts out an email trying to figure out who this would affect. In this case, it would probably affect Rudy and his staff, and then we'd have to go through the documents. They're supposed to give them to me to look over, and then at one point they are disclosed. That's how it's supposed to work. Now, there's exceptions, like private information. If you're writing down private stuff while you're in this meeting, depends what the content was. But if it's private, that could be redacted, meaning it could be taken out of the record that is disclosed. The city does not have a lot of time to do that. And it depends on how voluminous the record is. If it's this thick, that's not very bad. But say it's 10,000 pages, which litigation is a different issue. Litigation is supposed to be done through discovery. However, litigators in Arizona find a way, they just do a public record request, and they get it quicker. So say I get a 10,000-page public record request for things involving a case. Am I supposed to just put it aside? That's too much. I'll do that in 6 months. I can't do that. I have to do it promptly. That's what the statute says, and they define that. What they really mean, even though they didn't define it very well, you're supposed to do it quickly. What they really mean is if you're not going to overburden your city, me, then I have to put aside everything I'm working on to work on that. That's what I'm supposed to do. So that if I did that and it doesn't hurt the city on how it operates, that's what you're supposed to do. And if you don't, there are some nasty repercussions that could happen. We had a case back in 2000. We had a shooting, and they wanted the settlement agreement with the plaintiff. And the case was assigned by our risk pool, meaning our insurance company. So it wasn't a city attorney who was there. They were a litigator, so they didn't really know about the rules, or they didn't care. I don't know. And so they didn't want to give out the settlement agreement because it was a significant amount. It was a police shooting, and a kid got killed. So basically, they refused to give it out. And so the press said, "Oh, we want that. We can have that." And they filed a lawsuit in Maricopa County. And then basically what happened was the judge said, "Oh, no, you have to give that out." And the plaintiff or the defense attorney said, "No, we don't. It's confidential. It's a confidential settlement." There's no such thing as a confidential settlement in the public sector. There isn't. It's public money. So it was $1.65 million payout, and that's what they wanted, and that was the headline after they got the information. And then, because the city, meaning this attorney, didn't hand over the documents when they should have, there were attorney fees associated with it by this First Amendment law firm. As I recall, it was about $39,000. And I think we were only in court for 2 or 3 weeks. So that shows you how much money things can cost when you get into that level.
So as an example, during Mike's presentation, I took some notes simply because I know some other people who are going to be interested in some of that information. So technically, I should turn those notes over to Rudy,
Technically, yes.
or I can ask Mike for a copy of his presentation.
Well, no, you have to give the notes up because you were taking them pursuant to what was being discussed. You could also ask him for whatever, he presented. You can do that too.
Okay.
But your notes are technically public record.
Just turn them on to the video.
Or watch the video
Correct.
again.
Yeah.
Some people don't want to watch the video. They just don't want to scan through it. They're too lazy. They'd rather have something in front of them that they could read.
That's why I quit taking notes during this.
Yeah.
There are a lot of exceptions, and we don't have to go through all of them, but there's a whole bunch of cases at the end of this document. And we can charge fees for it, if it's a commercial or non-commercial. Let's see, I think that's it. I'll keep that short because you could read all those cases. If you want any of those cases, I can provide you a copy. Anything else?
I have nothing. Anybody else have anything? Robin, would you like to add anything?
No,
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Outstanding as always.
Thank you.
Let's see, number 8, information and reports. Does anybody on the commission have anything? I have nothing to add tonight. Does anybody on the commission have anything?
It's supposed to rain tomorrow,
It is?
tonight.
I had sprinkles on the way here.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't know. And I'm glad spring's here.
Number 9, director's report. Rudy, do you have
Nothing
anything?
this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Number 10, selection of meeting dates and time, location, and purpose of the next meeting.
Chair, I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission hold a regular meeting on March 28th, 2023 at 7 p.m. in the City Council Chambers at 300 East Superstition Boulevard. In the event there are no items to be brought forward to the commission, these meetings may be canceled, notification of cancellation properly posted, and the commission notified by staff.
Do I have
Second.
Rudy, I have a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call?
Commissioner Barker,
yes,
Commissioner Callan,
Yes.
Chairman Hanshi,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gage,
Yes.
Commissioner Cantwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Shanebeck,
Yes.
Commissioner Begeman.
Yes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And now adjourn the meeting at 8:01 p.m.